Well, good day. It's an honor and joy to be with Aidan Hart, our mosaic artist, who has now completed the mosaic project here at St. George. Aid, we are honored and blessed to have you here. We hate to see you go, but you will be leaving so much here with us. And before you departed back to England to your family, we just wanted to ask you a few questions about the project. The first one was just, how did the project come to be?
Well, I got an email from an unknown priest from America which oozed warmth, saying that Fr James, was going to expand the church and wanted a mosaic. And my assistant and I had only just finished a mosaic, which he put onto our website perhaps 2 months earlier. And Fr James, your good self, had seen this, and he wanted to commission a mosaic for the two walls on the north and the south side of the west end of the church. So a lovely long correspondence developed, and there were some hiccups on the way, but God blessed, and it was commissioned.
Yeah.
I don't know what the time was between the first email and actually commissioning.
I think it was close to 3.5 to 4 years. Yeah, yeah. And which was a question, how long did the process take? And could you describe the steps of the process from the conception in your mind to the beautiful work that we have here at St. George, both from the drawing all the way to the installation?
I think any icon, though it's an image, must be an image of a reality experienced. So if I'm doing an icon of a saint, I try to get to know that saint first, so you're not doing an icon of an icon, an image of an image, but an image of a person you know and love. So the first thing was to study again all the liturgical texts of the Crucifixion and the Resurrection, to talk with you about your vision for what was to be emphasised. And I recall that you wanted them relating to the two paintings you already had. And I think that's good that a new thing should actually be part of a history of the church, not something that drops out of Mars, but it's an organic growth from what people have worshipped in front of for a long time. So it's a combination of sharing your own vision, the existing paintings that you had in the church, my own experience of the Crucifixion and the Resurrection through studying the liturgical text in particular. And then I came over here and did drawings here, didn't I? Then you gave feedback and we adjusted those. Then I did colour versions, which were the basis really of the mosaic. So mosaic is always different from painting. So as we were making it, Martin and I were changing things, because I very much believe that each medium has its own strengths and weaknesses. So we're not imitating painting here, but obviously it's inspired by painted icons. We're making work in a different medium. So it's a steep learning curve. We would put things on, take them on, put them on, fine-tune, discuss the best adamenta, which is the name given to the direction of the tesserae. It's not just colour, it's the direction. We made it in sections because it's such a large work, 16 feet by 12, that we made it as a sort of grown-up's jigsaw puzzle really. So the next stage was to blow everything up to full size onto paper, change, fine-tune the drawings, and then decide where the jigsaw puzzle was going to be cut up, basically. We decided to make the joins and the cuts more or less around the figures. So that's another decision. We didn't want to have enormous pieces too unwieldy, but we didn't want too many little pieces, because then they would have to be joined in situ.
And the actual process here was installing it, and it was installed
with great joy. I can't express my appreciation of the love poured out on Martin and myself. It has been a little taste of paradise. So after working quite intensely for about 1.5 years in England, making all the sections, we sent them over by freight, and we ourselves came over. And it took a month working 6 days a week, first to screw the sections onto the wall, which only took a day or two in each case. But then the long job was to fill over the gaps with tesserae. And as you know, also we changed things as we went as well.
Sure,
so out of the hammer and chisel, no eraser here, just hammer and chisel. So I very much learned that if something's wrong, you've got to not fiddle around with it. You've got to go and make a big change. This will be up, God willing, for a few centuries. So you've got to be mould and
Right.
adjusting things. The process we used in England was one I learned in Ravenna in Italy where I studied, where though the backgrounds are put directly onto the mortar, the more complicated things like face and garments, we put a thing called lime putty on, about an inch thick, which stays soft for a long time. And we would put the tesserae on, and if we didn't think it was working, we'd take it off and put it back on again until we got it right. And then we glued cloth on with rubber skin glue. Once that was dry, took it all off, took the lime off the back, and then glued it back onto its permanent base, and then removed the cloth with hot water. So that allowed us not only to make adjustments, as it were, in this plane, but also move the tesserae around. Tesserae play with light, especially the gold. So we're really keen on that method rather than what's called the inverse method, where you make everything upside down and end up with a very flat surface. Which seems criminal to me, since tesserae, glass tesserae, the cubes we work with, reflect light. Why not play with that light? And all the Byzantine traditional mosaics are done that way.
And that's one of the advantages, you would say. You're an artist that works with many different mediums. What advantages would you say tesserae have, the mosaic tile have, as opposed to paint or clay?
Permanence, it doesn't fade. Brilliance, it's quite a high-class medium in the sense that you've got really quite intense saturated light. And it moves throughout the day as the light moves, so the reflections move. So one mosaic will be different mosaics throughout the process of the day. The gold background painting has that to some extent. But also the mosaic is part of the wall, it's actually part of the architecture, whereas a portable icon, a hung one, is sort of separate from the architecture to some extent. Also, I love the simplicity of mosaic. Our mosaicists to imitate painting, and I respect the craftsmanship for that, but the great Byzantine works on the whole simplify things, and it's actually very difficult to simplify. You've got to know what you're simplifying. So that's always the challenge, really, how to simplify a garment particularly, so one gets to the essence of it. I just love how the Church Fathers say the second stage of the spiritual life is to hear the words of God within each created thing. So God created each thing with the Word, the divine Word, but keeps that thing in existence and keeps it moving towards the second coming of Christ, the New Jerusalem. And then our second stage of the spiritual life is to discover those words of each thing. And clay is one thing, paint's another, a tree's another. Each has got its own unique logos. So when one is depicting garments, you're just finding the best way to do that with that mosaic type colour.
This is kind of a twofold question. One, what have the St. George mosaic icons taught you? And what would you like your product that will be in our church to the end of time, what would you like it to evoke from those who are able to participate in its beauty?
Very important questions, particularly the last one, is what it's all about. Might and I will disappear, we're not important, it's what remains, and how the Lord comes to people through the mosaic. So what we learned, patience, setting high standards, so something's not quite right, change it, don't look for second best. You're a servant of Christ, to know nothing made with human hands can get the least bit near the beauty of God. You've got to do your best. Importance of drawing, I think. Everything depends on the drawing. If the drawing's wrong, and I made a few mistakes, and I wasn't careful enough with the proportions. You can scrub it out and change it in a few seconds with pencil, but to do the same with the mosaic can take 2 days. So being really particular with the drawing. The drawing is like the first day of creation, and everything else that comes after to get that first day right. What I'd like parishioners of St. George to receive from it, well, it's in God's hands, but I'm interested in the effect of divine liturgical beauty on the soul. I think, and this is perhaps more a matter of mission work than people already Christians, but I think first of all we need to catch a fragrance of paradise, a fragrance of Christ. And then this stimulates nostalgia for paradise, and if someone thinks, what's that? I want instruction how to get there is going to be meaningless. You've got to want to go to the place. So think of divine beauty, and I hope that people can sense a bit of that in these. Create that sort of longing, and then we need words. How do we get to this beauty? And I think beauty capital B is one of the names of Christ. Wisdom, life, all these other names. So that's one thing. So I hope it brings some people closer to who don't know. For those who do, I just hope that the different layers of meaning. I think that little talk on Sunday, and just in the hour I had thinking about it, I just realised there's so many different layers. So hopefully over the years, especially looking at the liturgical texts of the Crucifixion and the Resurrection, I realised there's a correlation between the printed wisdom of the Church and the coloured wisdom of the Church, because I think the image and the word go hand in hand. Quite often we just go to a liturgy on a feast day, but to me there's so much teaching in the law and the liturgical texts of the Church. So I hope people will sort of go through the different layers of the image with the help of the word. Christ was historically crucified and historically resurrected, are historical facts. But the meaning of that in the past is that we are crucified and that we are resurrected in Christ. So in a sense, I want these images to become redundant, because I want people to know what it is to die to selfishness and to live for the other, and to raise with Christ, and to know that we are really seated in heaven in Christ.
Well, this last question probably isn't fair, because you have brought with you over 500,000 pieces of tesserae, mosaic tile, and if you think of those 500,000 pieces, what 3 words could you use to describe this St. George mosaic project that's encompassed your life for now almost 3.5 to 4 years?
I think of 2, perhaps fragrant beauty. So that's what I'm aiming to give, or not to give, I can't give it, but to be a vehicle of giving that. I think the Lord uses all of our senses to draw us close to Him. I remember I was in Anglican Episcopalian before I became Orthodox, and there was an old lady in our parish who had been going to church all her life, but she went through a rebellious period. She didn't want anything to do with God, but being a creature of habit, she went to church still. And it was a high church, in other words, we had incense and all these things. So she sat in the back of the church. She herself told me this story, and she closed her eyes and blocked her ears. Okay, I'm here just because I'm used to going to church, but I don't want anything to do with you, God. I'm blocking you out. At the time of sensing, the fragrance of the incense went up her nostrils, and a little voice said to her inside, well, perhaps I can't get in through your ears or through your eyes, but I can get up through your nose.
Wow.
In other words, if we block off God through one sense, then God can draw us in through another sense.
Beautiful. Well, your work is a fragrant offering. We thank you, and we're blessed that today is the presentation of Christ. When Christ was presented into the temple by his mother, into the arms of righteous Simeon, and you have presented that same Christ to us, the crucified and resurrected Lord, in these beautiful images that will preach the gospel in many ways.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you again, Father, for the honour and taking the risk of giving us 2 bits of wall, 16 feet by 12 feet, to make something. It's a risk, isn't it? It's a risk.
Thank God.
Thank you.
Thank God. Glory to God. Thank you.
Pleasure.